Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Better Together Tuesdays. I'm Joel Barrett. I'm a business development consultant with the Missouri Small Business Development Center at UMKC. And together, we're going to make business simple even in complex times like these. This webinar series is in response to the many questions that we receive on a daily basis from small business owners in the Kansas City, Missouri region and beyond. Why? During COVID-19, there were just a lot of questions coming up about things related to small business. It exposed a lot of areas where business owners maybe hadn't given some thought beforehand. It also made it very challenging to navigate all of these things that we talk about in this webinar. And I saw a quote by Shelley Seifert, the CEO of First Bank in St. Louis, that said, "Surviving and thriving in a crisis is rarely a solo event. Thus, Better Together Tuesdays." So that is the reason we came up with this webinar, to try to help, because we do believe that we're better together. We're going to divide this webinar into three parts. They are unequal parts because it just depends on how much we have going on in each, how much conversation in each segment. The first part is focus, where we're going to look at some of the areas that we hear about the most. And then we'll get into innovate section, which is where we talk about maybe what we can be doing differently, both now and in the future. And then we'll wrap it up with the third and final part, which is engage, where I tell you where you can learn more information. There's no way we can cover everything in this 30 minutes. And unfortunately, we don't have time to take questions from the audience. You're welcome to put them into chat. I probably just won't get to them. The goal is to give you just enough direction to know where to go to get the answers to your questions. Today, I'm really pleased to have three guests that have returned. They weren't scared off by the first experience when we talked about unemployment. And so all three of them agreed to come back and do unemployment part 2. And so please welcome Erica Brune from Lever One, Belinda Wagner from People US, and Dolores or D. Rose from the Missouri Department of Labor. Thank you, all three of you, for being my guest again today.
Thanks for having us.
It has been just a little over a month ago since we talked, and a lot of water has gone under the bridge, and a lot of water continues to go under the bridge. So just real briefly as you can, I'd just like to ask each one of you, and I'll ask you by name, what, if anything, has changed since our last conversation related to your area of expertise? So let's start with Belinda. What's changed since the last time we talked?
Just with the last time we talked, I think people were beginning to struggle with the provisions under the FFCRA. And so we were helping people interpret those things. Now we're seeing all of the nuances that are coming up as a result. All of the things that really are not specifically covered under that portion of the bill relative to sick leave or extended FMLA. As with every regulation that's issued, there are gray areas and loopholes. Now we're trying to help clients successfully navigate through, things that may not necessarily fall directly under the regs, but certainly from an ethical and a PR perspective, you want to pay attention to.
Okay, all right, good to know. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those things in specific, as they are amongst the questions we're going to be talking about. So, Erica, from your point of view, what's changed since the last time we talked?
We've seen an enormous amount of businesses being allowed to reopen in some form or plan for reopening. And so we are seeing a lot of concern for employees on what the right way to reintegrate them into the office or workforce, the right way to recall them off of unemployment, and manage the employees who don't feel comfortable or don't have the availability to come back to work. So those are some of the things that we're heavily focused on, as we are just seeing, I believe, Kansas go into phase 2 potentially just this Friday, which I think has just come out in the last hour or so. And so just people are still very unsure of what that means for them specifically. Every business is unique, and what the right thing is to do for their employees. So we're really working a lot with best practices, safety measures, and how to recall employees off of unemployment.
Good, good. So we're going to talk about that, especially in the second segment. Dee, a lot has changed since we talked last time. So what's your thoughts about that?
Well, we're doing a lot of pivoting too. We're going from that, massive unemployment claims to the number of claims going down and people returning to work, and what we need to look at, what we need to tell people about returning to work, and how to safely return to work. So we've started to change a lot of our messaging too toward people going back to work.
Okay, good to know. So let's get into a few questions here. One of which is kind of we've hinted at here, so it's a big question, but I think we can get at it. Many business owners have now received their PPP funds, their idle funds, but they're finding that some of their employees don't want to return to the workplace for various reasons. So what does that mean for both the employer and the employee if, okay, I'm ready to bring you back, and your employees are saying, no, I don't think I want to come back. Can we start with you, Dee?
Well, on our end, I'll tout our site one more time, labor.mo.gov /coronavirus has a lot of answers to frequently asked questions, and we change those up at least every other day. It seems like we're adding more questions on there as, of course, our focus keeps changing, but there is on that site, and actually on our homepage, labor.mo.gov itself, where an employer can actually report work refusals. And that doesn't necessarily mean that people have refused to come back to work yet. You can report that you're going to be recalling your 20, 40, 50, whatever, however many employees you have, and that if they are unemployment, it just gives notice to us that those individuals then have been recalled to work. And so there would be an issue put on their claim at that point to find out if they've refused work. Presumably, if you're been offered your job, you're planning on going back to work. We do have individuals. Right now, we've had not a whole lot, actually, of work refusals. It's kind of interesting at this point. We really haven't had a lot. I think part of it is people know they're being expected to come back to work. And there's other groups of people who just want to get back to work. They're tired of being at home and they want to get back to work again.
So I brought up your website while you were talking so people can see. I see there's a great big headline there about report employee work refusal. There's
Can't miss
fraud.
it.
There's
and that's our link directly to our FAQ website then. So
okay.
That big purple box.
So there's a lot of information there. I just want everybody that's in the webinar to see that you provide a lot of great information there. Erica, additional thoughts on people and employees? Are you experiencing that with any of your clients?
We certainly have clients that are concerned about this, but I would agree with Dee. The majority of the employees that we are working with are eager to return to work. I would also note that since we cover 2 states here in the Kansas City Metro, the Kansas side takes a slightly different approach to refusal to work than Missouri, and allows employees who feel they may be at higher risk or caring for someone at higher risk to potentially be excused from the same provision that Missouri is really helping the employers dispute claims. And so every state is treating this sensitivity to employees being recalled a little bit differently. And that is very difficult for employers to navigate. I would also mention there is a perceived fear, which is real, that employers have about returning employees into the workplace, even if they are permitted to reopen, that they may then eventually be liable for the spread of the coronavirus unintentionally, and it may not even be proven that it was incurred at the workplace, but there is a fear that business owners will be held liable. And so they're really struggling, and I urge them to be cautious if an employee is nervous to return, to really think through if there's any way to accommodate that person based on what their needs are and what their circumstances are.
Belinda, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Erica. So, our businesses have a lot of challenges. People are genuinely fearful, as are our employers. We've done a lot of work with our employers to try and help them craft safeguards for the folks that are in office. Frankly, some of our biggest challenges have been in supplies. In order to maintain a safe workplace, we're hoping to provide, whether it be disposable surgical masks or it's Clorox wipes or disinfectant for the office, or do we take temperatures or do we not? But those supplies are almost impossible to find. And so even if we craft what we think are true safety guidelines, it's very difficult to fulfill that when you actually can't get the supplies that you need to do it properly.
Okay. So there's obviously, we still have some room to grow in that area and figure out the answer, the solutions to some of those things. And we'll come back around to that. Let me ask, Dee, you mentioned to me in an email this term shared work. Can you tell me more about what that means?
Shared work in the state of Missouri is a 30-plus-year-old program, and it allows an employer to take the work that is available and divide it among a group of employees during a downturn in business for whatever reason. And those employees then work a partial schedule and still are able to receive partial unemployment during that period of time. And about about half of the states actually have a program like that. Some call it short time compensation, some call it work share. They do vary from state to state. The hours for the employee would be cut anywhere from 10 to 60%. In Missouri, we're 20 to 40% that the hours can be cut. But right now, it's a really good program as a way of initiating your employees back into the workplace. They've been off for a period of time and you want to bring them back. And so in Missouri, we're talking the 20 to 40% cut. So if you talk about a 40-hour-a-week employee, you bring them back for 24 hours a week. So they're still getting 24 hours worth of regular pay. They still get their regular benefits, and they'd still be able to draw partial unemployment benefit through the shared work program, which would entitle them to the extra $600 of the federal supplement also. So it's a nice way of bringing them back. And the other thing it does, it helps the employer to social distance. It helps the employer to be able to flex scheduling during that time. And, so you bring your people back 24 hours, maybe 30 hours, work them up to 32 hours, and they could still be on the shared work program under that. And then something happens. You could also then gear down the business also and take them back to 24 hours or take them back to full unemployment again. So it allows the employer that flexibility to hold on to their employees during the time to gear up and to gear down their business as they need to by being able to flex the schedule. And since these are your trained, skilled employees, it gives them the opportunity to keep up their skill sets by working, say, 3 to 4 days a week, still know what's going on inside the business and still able to be part of the company so that when you're ready to gear up, you've got that fully skilled workforce. If you need to gear down, you've got them still available to help you either way.
That's really great. I'm not sure I was aware of the term shared work until you emailed me. So that educated me on that. That does, you touched on this. And this is directly from a client that I was dealing with that's saying, well, I'm doing the best I can. I got these PPP funds. We're trying to keep things going for the next 8 weeks. But what if at the end of that 8 weeks, let's say another round hits or I can't, it's just not working for me? Then do all my employees, can I shut down again? And my employees, do they draw unemployment again? And how does that work, Dee, if at the end of this 8 weeks, we have to revisit some of these things?
Well, I would say to start with, the PPP program and shared work don't play well together, because if you're paying your employees to work full time, they're not partially unemployed. So they're pretty much separate programs. But if you were on the PPP program and at the end of that period of time, business hasn't picked it back up yet, you can actually apply for the shared work program. The employers apply for it, not the employees. And the employers tell us which employees are going to be on the program. And the employers actually report to us how many hours those individuals work during the week. We don't, under shared work, we don't ask how much their pay is. We ask the number of hours they work. And we're looking at the percentage of hours that have been cut for that individual, so they get the corresponding percentage of unemployment. So 20, 30, 40% of unemployment, whatever, for the week. corresponding to the number of hours that their work week was cut. But the employer can bring those people on then, from having been on a PPP program. If they're not ready to bring them back full time, bring them back 32 hours, and they can still get the partial unemployment benefit plus the federal supplement at that point.
All right, good. Erica, Belinda, have you had people, clients are taking advantage of this?
Personally, I haven't.
Yeah, I don't know that I have too many. I've seen some interest in applying for the shared work, but back to what you asked, I think originally was, once the PPP money runs out, I do fear business owners will be faced with an additional round of layoffs if they have not seen business resume to the pre-COVID levels of operation. The PPP allowed them to potentially, not in all cases, but potentially employ their workforce and cover those wages through that period. But many places like restaurants and other hospitality type businesses, or just general service businesses that don't have the revenue or don't have the full occupancy clearance, are just not going to be able to continue keeping a full staff if they're not allowed to use them or need them. And so I am predicting that we see another round, unfortunately, of layoffs and furloughs until at that which time business picks back up to the levels of which it was at pre-COVID, where they had that full staff operating. And that will be different for every industry, and certainly different for different parts of the country based on where the numbers are in those regions.
Belinda, did you want to add something?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I agree with both takes. We've sort of not had many clients in industries that had to completely close. But during the PPP funding period, if you had to completely close, there was just no sense to have an employee's report. If those businesses are not up to full capacity once all is said and done, which I do think it's going to take a little while for that to happen, I imagine that we'll see another round sort of somewhere towards, the end of this month, beginning of June.
Question to Dee. The $600 from the federal, the FPUC, when does that end for people?
Right now, the way it stands, unless Congress does something else, that will be July the 25th in Missouri. It's through the 31st of July, as late as the 31st of July, but it's based on the week ending date for each specific state, and ours ends on Saturday, so it'll be July 25th.
Sure. And just a reminder to folks, I think I saw something, I'm not really watching the chat, but I think I saw a portion of this, that the PPP funds originally were designed to be used up by June 30th. There's been that water continues to flow under the bridge as far as some of that, but that's generally how it was anticipated being used by. Unemployment that's coming in, is it taxable? And let's just talk about that. Belinda, do you want to speak to that?
Well, Dee might be better off with that one, but yeah, my understanding is that it is.
Dee?
Yeah, unemployment is taxable as income when you file your taxes. They're going to ask you about it, and we would send anybody who draws unemployment, we'll send them a 1099-G at the end of the year so they know how much to file with their taxes.
Let's talk about Family Medical Leave, Family Leave Medical Act, FLMA. I always get those letters all twisted out of my mouth when I try to say them. Because I hear a lot of people talking about this and what does that mean for them during this time. We touched a little bit of this on the last time we talked, and I'm still getting that kind of inquiry of what about that? What if somebody comes in and gets sick, or what if somebody doesn't want to return because they're sick? Can they use FLMA? And Belinda, I think that's one of your areas of specialty.
Yeah,
right?
so there's several things afoot. So EFMLA, the extended FMLA, was designed for folks with small children at home. We've obviously been watching what's happening with schools, daycares. There are a limited number of daycares open that are serving our essential workers, but the routine daycare has really been taken somewhat off the table. You've seen through each of the various states' phased approaches to opening that many summer programs have been just either called off or delayed. And And working parents obviously rely on those programs in order to allow them to work. I think that you know, everybody's talking about back to work and they're talking about, you know, rejoining the workforce, but we still have to worry about this huge contingent of our working families that are responsible for children that are small enough that they can't be left at home alone. And so EFMLA, while it does not provide 100% pay, it does provide 2/3 pay. You can take a tax credit for it as an employer. You know, and I'm seeing now that after a period of 7-8 weeks from working at home, where 2-parent families are completely burnt out on trying to manage full-time jobs and managing the kids, we're starting to see EFMLA requests increase. As a result of that, it is a challenge, especially if you have, you know, homeschool curriculum that you're expected to teach your kids in addition to working 40 hours a week. So that I'm seeing an increase, frankly. I think initially it was, everybody was super people. They're like, we can do this. We've got this. We can homeschool our kids. Now they're discovering that over time, it's just becoming more and more of a burden. So.
All right. Anything to add to that? Erica?
There you go. I 100% agree. I think we're still seeing a lot of challenges with people who have the children at home. Most summer camps and most summer activities, and in addition to daycare, have all been canceled. And so the extended family medical leave and the paid sick leave is extending through the end of the year, which is a really fantastic option for both the employer, because it is credited back to them through a payroll tax credit, as well as the employee to exercise their right to take care of whatever they need to at home, as long as it meets the criteria for those leaves. So those will be in place through the end of the year.
And we're going to next week on Better Together Tuesdays, we're going to be talking about payroll tax credits and how to understand those. So tune in for that, those of you that are interested in that. You mentioned earlier, Erica, kind of the fear, the liability, the fear of like, am I going to be liable? Let's take that question and move into the innovate part of this this webinar and talk about what should employers be concerned about and what could they be doing to alleviate some of that concern.
Certainly thinking through a return to work and safe protocols within the office that are issued by the CDC. There is an enormous amount of guidance on their website about for employers and for the workplace. Things like cleaning stations, ways to separate or alternate employees so that they can maintain the social distancing. We're seeing a lot of businesses, even if you're back in the office, still conducting meetings virtually so that you're no longer congregating people in one space. A lot of people are electing to close the communal areas, such as the kitchens and things that it's just impractical to keep clean. And I think from the overarching advice is try everything within reason to create a safe and working environment that your employees feel comfortable returning to work. And just that open door, I will listen culture, so that employees can feel like they can express some of their concerns or needs as they navigate through this. As Belinda mentioned, there's a whole layer of anxiety on top of just the obvious working environment that's going on within the workforce. So those are some of the tips that we're seeing, because the liability is truly on the business owner at this point to create that type of working environment. And that's a moving target.
And if you've ever seen our break room microwave, you know why these safeguards are so important. Dee, in regards to that, you mentioned something in the email about some services that people can take advantage of to make sure that they're complying with regulations. Can you tell us more about that?
We are not just unemployment, as people would like to think right now. We actually are also the Division of Labor Standards with the state of Missouri. And we have a program that's also been around for like 30 years. It's called the On-Site Safety and Health Consultation Program. These individuals that are our consultants are actually all OSHA trained, OSHA certified inspectors. But unlike OSHA, we come out, we don't fine anybody. We don't penalize anybody. We ask them to fix any serious violations, but they are all trained to come out. And now we're even doing virtual tours of facilities to be able to look over and to make recommendations, to tell you if there's actually something, if OSHA came in, that they would fine you for, so that you can fix it before OSHA does come in. And we don't report anything to OSHA, so no worries on that end. But the employer tells us, you know, what area of the company, what plant, what site, what they want us to look at, and we'd be glad to then give this free consultation to the business to let them know. And right now they've been schooled very much in the CDC and OSHA guidelines for returning businesses safely to work. So it's a free program. labor.mo.gov/onsite is what it is. And you can sign up right there. And the preference is helping small businesses.
It's really outstanding. I'm so glad that you told me about that. Yeah, good, really good to know. Well, we're running a little low on time, so I'm trying to think of which question to ask. Let's do this. Let's do a little round here of just what one piece of advice you want to leave our listeners with today to help them moving forward. What's something they can really be doing now and moving forward to help them? We'll start with Belinda.
First, I'm going to sort of go with Kansas recommendations. A number of us have been working from home, and we've done so successfully, and it's been to the surprise of many of the companies we support at how successful it's been. Our recommendation thus far for those that can do it is to continue to do it. We are, you know, we're successfully navigating through business. The business hasn't suffered as a result. I recognize that a lot of businesses come, but if we continue to telework in the short term, at least, we really do our bit to decrease the burden for those companies that have to return. And so that's basically what we've recommended to our clients if they can do it.
That's awesome. Erica.
I would add for business owners to consult with some sort of HR professional on their recall policy, to really think through who they're recalling and who they're not, as well as then if they go through another round of layoffs or furloughs, really be thinking through how that selection process is unbiased and in a compliant manner beyond just more of a random selection. Those are things that need to be thought through to stay compliant.
I brought up Erica's website while she was talking. That's lever1.com. And then Belinda's website is peoplepeopleus.com. Both of those. So if you want to contact either one of these ladies, of course, we've talked about the Missouri Department of Labor. Dee, what final words do you have for people moving forward?
I'd say the biggest thing is everybody remember that we're all in this together. It's not employers versus employees. We're all trying to work together to get back up and get things running. So, you know, it really is a communications thing at this point. Your employee has an issue, listen to them. There's something maybe you can help them with. An employer wants to reopen. You know, it's just, it really is. If it's a safety issue, if it's a return to work issue, whatever it is, it's employer and employee working together at this point. It's not us against them.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Also wanted, something I did forget to cover, but as you're doing any of this work concerning employment, the most important word that I could leave with you is document. Document everything. If you're offering a job back to someone and they don't take it, document that. Have that down. Just, you cannot document enough. It would be better to have the documents and not need them than vice versa. So I guess that was my personal advice, is everything that you're doing with all of your employees, make sure that you've documented it well. So if there's any kind of audit or question about it later, you have to prove anything, you can show, whether that's to get your loan forgiveness, whether it's to talk about the unemployment and maybe a rejection of that, whatever, you need to have the documents. So during this time, that's probably been the biggest word that we've come up with over and over and over again, which is document. I do want to remind you that the Missouri Small Business Development Center is available to you. There's always one-on-one coaching available. I also want to, well, let me go there. Just make sure you just go to the contact button over there. And then KC SourceLink, of course, is our partner in this webinar. There are, as you see right here at the top, this big yellow bar. You can click on there and stay up to date on all kinds of COVID-19 related business resources and updates. So I want to thank
It seems like Joel maybe froze a little bit. So I'll finish the closing out. He was just getting ready to say thanks, everyone. Are you there, Joel? Okay.
I don't know what happened. It just disappeared all of a sudden. I was like, oh, I guess I'm done talking.
You just froze right up. Okay.
Oh, it was weird. Okay, well, thank you again to Dee, to Erica, to Belinda for being our guests today. We really appreciate your knowledge and expertise. And because of you, we're better together on Tuesday. Thanks so much, everyone.